Howdy! Let's talk about the Galveston Cruise Port located in Galveston, Texas. This serves as a major cruise departure point along the Gulf Coast, often servicing cruises heading to the Western Caribbean. The port is located on Galveston Island, situated off the coast of Texas in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, many of the major cruise lines sail from Port of Galveston, and these ships dock at one of two terminals, Cruise Terminal 25 or 28. Royal Caribbean has its own pier, which is the newest, which is Cruise Terminal 10. Now, the Port of Galveston address varies depending upon your departure terminal. Terminal 25 is 2502 Harborside Drive, Terminal 28 is 2702 Harborside Drive, and Cruise Terminal 10 is 1152 Royal Caribbean Way. It's important to note that the newer Cruise Terminal 10 isn't in the immediate vicinity of the other two terminals, but it's about a mile away. Make sure to consult your cruise documents to determine the specific terminal from which your sailing departs, or you can just look at signage at the port. Now let's talk about some of the alcohol rules in Galveston, because this port is a little bit different than most of the others in the United States. There are specific rules around drink packages and duty-free alcohol purchases that are different than other cruise ports. Now this is due to a state law, specifically the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Code, or TABC 28.07. According to this law, cruisers are bound to some unique parameters. So let's talk about when drink packages take effect when you're sailing from Galveston. First, depending on the cruise line you're sailing with, cruisers may be unable to take advantage of their drink package, such as Carnival's Cheers package, immediately upon their sailing, and it may not take effect until the ship is into international waters. Now, in contrast, Royal Caribbean does make alcohol through drink packages available immediately, but within a limited menu. Now, the differences here depend on the various licenses purchased and held by the various cruise lines, as well as the distributor from which they purchase the alcohol. It gets really complicated. Now, let's talk about taxes on alcohol in Galveston, because another difference in alcohol when sailing from Galveston is related to taxation. Also, due to those TABC requirements, cruisers who buy duty-free alcohol or tobacco must pay state tax upon their return. State tax is also applied to any beverage purchases, alcohol or otherwise, while the ship is in U.S. waters. Now let's talk about getting to the Galveston cruise port. Most cruisers who come in by air to sail out of Port Galveston fly into George Bush Intercontinental Houston Airport, or IAH, or the William P. Hobby Airport, airport code HOU. Unfortunately, neither of these are close to the cruise port. Hobby is closest, about 41 miles, and IAH is about 70 miles. The direct route to the cruise port from both airports is via Interstate 45. Now, unfortunately, in this area, traffic and construction are common, so the average time to get from either airport to the cruise port can exceed an hour and a half. Pro tip, if you're flying into Houston and making the drive to Galveston, note that there is a Buc-ee's right off I-45 in Texas City. It's a really fun stop worth checking out. Now, given that Galveston is quite a distance from Houston and its airports, the hotels in Houston area do not generally offer shuttle service, even for a fee, although some of the Galveston hotels do, and I'm talking about shuttle service from the hotel to the cruise port. Now, here are some of the best ways to get from the Houston area airports to the Galveston cruise port. Your first option is cruise line transfer service. Most cruise lines offer transfer service, and Carnival service from IAH to Galveston Cruise Terminal, just as one example, is $59 per person. This can be booked directly through your cruise line. When it comes to getting to port, though, I prefer rideshare, like Uber. In this case, the long distance means that the ride can cost $65 to $110, depending on a number of factors, but it's very convenient. Another option is private transfer. Cruisers can book their own private transfer service. I have my recommendation down in the description, so make sure you check it out, especially if you're traveling with a group of people. It's a lot cheaper. And I always like to recommend public transportation, but in this case, there are not any easily accessible public transportation options to get to the Port of Galveston. Now let's talk about best Galveston hotels for cruisers. If you are coming in the night before, you're looking for a place to stay, I recommend that you stay in Galveston. While it might seem tempting to select a hotel near the airport and transport to the Port of Galveston on embarkation day, I advise against this for 3 reasons. First, the Houston area hotels aren't exactly in the best locations, especially Hobby. So staying at a hotel near the airport, not the best, most savory choice. Second, as I mentioned earlier, the distance between the airports and the cruise port is 41 miles and 70 miles, and the traffic and construction are notoriously bad, meaning that you can't exceed an hour and a half from airport to cruise port. And then finally, there isn't much to do in the immediate vicinity of the Houston airports, unlike in Galveston, where I think there's plenty of things to do. I advise cruisers to stay in a hotel in Galveston, although know that properties near the cruise port during peak times can of course spike in price. If that happens, budget-conscious cruisers might consider finding a hotel halfway down I-45 between Houston and Galveston to put them closer to port, but not pay as much for a hotel stay. Now let's talk about some specific hotels near Port of Galveston. Holiday Inn Resort Galveston on the beach is one of my recommendations because of a few reasons. One, it's in close proximity to the cruise terminal. It's about 3.5 miles away. The property features ocean view and balcony rooms. They have free Wi-Fi, a heated outdoor pool, and it's oceanside, meaning it's just a short walk across the street to get to the beach, where they have loungers and umbrellas available for rent. There's a ton of restaurants within walking distance, including Rainforest Cafe, which is great for families. If you're driving in, parking is available for $70 for the week for up to 8 days, and they do have a park stay and go rate, including shuttle to the port, parking, and one-night stay. The shuttle to port is $15 per person though, so I recommend just taking an Uber, which runs about $15 to $30 for up to 4 people. My next recommendation is the Tremont House Hotel Galveston. This hotel brings character and charm as Galveston's only downtown historic hotel in the Strand. And the Strand is just a district in Galveston that is their historic district. This is consistently one of the top rated properties in the area. The Strand area is beautiful. It's lined with ornate late 1800s buildings and filled with restaurants, art galleries, museums, shops, and more. It's one of the few hotels that is feasible to walk from the hotel to the port. It's just about 2 blocks. Although they do offer shuttle service for $15 per person, and Uber will cost you about $8 to $15, but that's up to 4 people. They do offer complimentary Wi-Fi and continental breakfast, and if you're driving, parking is available for $100 for a week, up to 7 days. My next recommendation is Harbor House at Pier 21. I like this because it's another property that's located really close to port, less than a mile away, and it's technically walkable depending upon the terminal from which you're sailing, but I don't recommend it. They do offer shuttle service at $15 for 2 people, along with free Wi-Fi and continental breakfast. If you take an Uber, it'll run you $9 to $15 for up to 4 people. If you need parking, it's $15 per night, and they do have some restaurants around the hotel, but your best bet here is to walk about 3 blocks to the Strand. If you're staying at a Galveston hotel the night before your cruise from the Port of Galveston, or if you have a morning to kill before your cruise, maybe you have a later embarkation time, there are a lot of great activities nearby, and all these sites are close to the recommended hotels, many of them even walkable. My first recommendation of places to visit in Galveston is the Strand. As I mentioned earlier, it's a great place to explore because it's Galveston's historic district. They have lots of great old buildings, restaurants, art galleries, museum shops, and more, and it's just blocks away from all of my recommended hotels. Also, as I mentioned earlier, Rainforest Cafe is right there as well, and that's a great option for families, as is the Galveston Railroad Museum, which provides interactive exhibits at a location that's less than a mile from all of my recommended hotels. Now let's talk about Galveston Cruise Port parking. The Port of Galveston offers official parking in several locations, and all of the port's parking facilities, they are secure and patrolled with ADA handicap accessible spaces. Those are available on a first come, first served basis. Parking starts at $18 per day, and they do offer valet service for an additional cost and a higher daily fee for oversized vehicles. Advanced parking reservations are not required, but the port offers discounted parking if you do make advanced reservations, and disabled veterans are eligible for a parking discount. The Port of Galveston provides 3 multi-level park and walk garages for cruisers departing from cruise terminals 25 or 28. Travelers cruising from Terminal 25 generally park at either the SMP garage, located at 150 25th Street, or Pier 25 lot at 2502 Harborside. And those departing from Terminal 28 will likely find parking closest to the terminal, what is called the Express lot, located at 2702 Harborside. And I know that's a lot, but don't worry, I have all of this information on my blog, which I'll also link down below in the description. Now, all 3 of these park and walk locations, they're a short walk across the street to the 2 respective cruise terminals, and they provide covered and uncovered spaces on a first come, first served basis. Additionally, there are 2 lots, Lot A and B, a bit further from the 2 Galveston cruise terminals, and the port offers a complimentary shuttle service, making it convenient to get there. Now, if you're parking at Cruise Terminal 10 in Galveston with Royal Caribbean, you can park either at the Port of Galveston's north or south lots, as well as the Pier 14 lot. These addresses are as follows. The north lot is located at 1152 Royal Caribbean Way, south lot is 1201 Royal Caribbean Way, and Pier 14 lot is 1390 Royal Caribbean Way. I do love Port of Galveston, and when I started this video, I started out with a little yeehaw. What's really cool is Port of Galveston is the only cruise port I've ever sailed from where there were actual cowboys in the pool on the Lido deck wearing cowboy hats, swim trunks, and nothing else. And cruisers from Galveston are also some of the most friendly, chatty people I've ever met in my life. I really enjoy cruising out of Galveston, and I hope you do too.